1982, two forms of folk art surfaced in the ghettos of New York: breaking and rapping. All rap really is chanting lyrics to a simple, funky beat.
This is a gross understatement, one that influenced the view on hip-hop by the masses.
Just hide behind free speech. It's called a poetic license. It was fundamentally wrong. These ignorant pigs don't know nothing about music.
Rap is so much more than chanting lyrics over a simple, funky beat. Rap is a political and artistic movement reaching as far back as the 70s, one that seeks to highlight and expose the alienation and oppression seen in American society through music, but has been unjustly blamed as the direct cause for that alienation and oppression. This is a tragic struggle rap artists had to fight to be recognized.
My name's Bill Ursum, aka DJ Lord Fader.
A few have dared to claim his name, but he is the original DJ Lord Fader, working in music and hip-hop since the late 80s. A period that is often referred to as the golden age of hip-hop.
Used to spin records at this place called Shebang's, and met a guy out there by the name of Cool Nate B. He took out this guy in a rap battle, and I was like, oh, we gotta hook up. And we kind of just formed our little crew, TKC, the Crucial Crew. Late 80s, early 90s, and there was... You definitely had your New York, East Coast hip-hop, but, East Coast was more that Public Enemy, Eric B. and Rakim. Of course, Florida got its own kind of weird sound with the Miami bass thing, but Miami bass was just, that started out of my old hometown of Opelika and around that area, mostly just... 808 kind of style sounds, but they would really play around with sampling and then pitch changing the 808 kick drum around so you could almost form a bass line with that, as well as it just being a bass drum. But then there was this whole West Coast thing coming out of California, and there was a lot of hard stuff that came out of that, but it was more, for the most part, I think a lot of West Coast stuff back then was a little more commercial.
This is Ice-T, one of the many West Coast rappers who landed in hot water for his more harsh style. His song Cop Killer being the subject of national protests that even involved Vice President at the time, Dan Quayle.
It is wrong to make money off a record that says it's okay to kill cops.
The artistic purpose of the song being exactly what Ice-T said.
Really, with the song Cop Killer, I'm saying is that they are so brutal, they are putting people to the point that people might want to go do that.
The song name drops Daryl Gates, the outright racist LA police chief who is known to be hostile towards casual drug users, and Rodney King, a man brutally beaten by the LA police.
First off, touch your chick and the click you claim. West side when we rock, I'm equipped with game.
This new harsh style became collectively known as gangsta rap and gained its face in the West Coast with Tupac Shakur. Although his career was riddled with numerous controversies, Tupac became beloved for his storytelling and his willingness to give a platform to the problems plaguing society. Gangsta rap grew to have a face in the East Coast as well, New York's own notorious B.I.G. Whilst Tupac was defined by his storytelling, Biggie was defined by technical mastery. Both vastly different in style, but similar in their dedication and love for rap. The two would eventually clash in the most infamous moment in hip-hop history, the East Coast-West Coast feud. This period came to define the 90s, but only got big due to a misunderstanding. The feud became mainstream with the release of Hit 'Em Up by Tupac, a brutal diss track trashing Biggie Smalls and everyone associated with him and his label Bad Boy Records. Throughout the song, Tupac references the song released by Biggie
Who shot you? Separate the weak from the ops.
Coincidentally dropped after Tupac was shot and jumped in an elevator near the studio for Bad Boy Records, which caused Tupac to believe it was directed towards him.
I knew it wasn't true. Or at least what I knew I was getting blamed for wasn't true. I can't speak for nothing else.
During the back half of the 90s, artists all across America would clash over this feud, leading to violence and death with a rise in gang-related activity.
I kind of realized how powerful Tupac and I was. You know what I'm saying? Because we two individual people, we waged a coastal beef. You know what I'm saying? One man against one man made a whole West Coast hate a whole East Coast.
This gigantic clash only accentuated the outrage towards gangsta rap felt by contemporary American society. One article said, referring back to the words of Judge Rainey, gangsta rap is not a commendable thing. It is not moral to preach and advertise some of the topics discussed in the lyrics, yet they're all present in the world. But isn't this what made gangsta rap great? The lack of concern about controversy, only concerned about relaying the stories artists had to tell.
So we not what they're making us to be. You know what I'm saying? We are the degree-outs. We the storytellers. We coming first. We telling you the news. You know what I'm saying? We like the three wise men coming through this.
Stories that often reflected on the shared experience of facing prejudice and poverty. The truth is, most of the protesters to Tupac, Biggie, and Ice-T were white middle-class Americans who probably never had to experience racism and poverty in their lives. Eventually, violence and death caught up to hip-hop's two biggest figureheads. Tupac Shakur was murdered on the 13th of September 1996, shot dead in his car after leaving a Mike Tyson fight in the MGM Grand.
Pac saved my life. The reason why I say Pac saved my life, I got shot in the head, got grazed some other places, but I still got the bullet in my head. My whole thing was, Pac, he was shot. I'm like, you shot? I'm gonna get you to the hospital. Pac was a man the whole time. It wasn't that he was like, oh, I'm shot. He cracking jokes. He like, yeah, they shot me. He said, but you shot in your head. Look at your head bleed. Look how much it's bleed.
Christopher Biggie Smalls Wallace died less than a year later on March 9th, 1997. Again, shot dead in his car after leaving a party for the Soul Train Music Awards.
And as we made it right, we were driving, everything was all right. We didn't know where we were going to, we just know the party was over, we were leaving. And as we were driving, I heard somebody yell, you know, they shot at Biggie's car. And then I just jumped out of my car and I ran directly to his car. And like all the doors were open. And, you know, he was hunched over and I was just there, I was talking to him. I mean, he was just basically saying, like, he couldn't wait for his album to come out, that, you know, he was just happy that he had finished it.
You talk about murder and death, and you don't talk about the pain. Or you talk about killing and robbing and stealing, you don't talk about jail and death and betrayal and all the things that go with it.
However, nearly 20 years later, the influence of this time period can still be felt.
He's saying everything that we're saying today. I talk about it too. I talk about murder, I talk about violence, I talk about all of that. Not to glorify it, to educate you on it, to know that it's real. For me, that's what separates me as an artist. I'm gonna give you the gift and I'm gonna give you the curse. Definitely a curse that has to be reversed. And that reverse may come tomorrow, but when you talk about change, you talk about time. And time can be forever when you're dealing with something such as murder, violence, and most importantly, hate.
And despite all the tragedies, murder, violence, hate, alienation, and oppression that all surrounded the 90s, hip-hop survived. No, not survived, triumphed. Hip-hop still proves more than just chanting lyrics over a simple, funky beat. Rap is currently one of the most popular genres of our generation, rivaling previous titans of music like rock and jazz. It is clear that we're experiencing the triumphant rise and success of hip-hop, and the artist who had to fight to be recognized.